Manly Hall official, is glad to produce, publish and offer. Dear friend, in first month's letter I defined philosophy as the science of essential wisdom and briefly outlined its 7 parts. Metaphysics is the first branch of philosophy, and therefore our lesson for this month will be devoted to metaphysics. The term metaphysics is derived from 2 Greek words meaning after physics, or beyond those things which pertain to external nature. The generally accepted definitions of the term are derived from Aristotle, the first author to prepare a lengthy treatise under this name. Aristotle uses the term metaphysics at one time as synonymous with wisdom and at another time as synonymous with theology. He also calls it the first philosophy. June 1, 1934. Broadly speaking, existence is divisible into 2 primary states, which Albertus Magnus termed physical and transphysical. The study of the visible universe is called physics, and the study of the invisible universe is called metaphysics. To philosophers, all visible effects are suspended from, or supported by, invisible causes, and metaphysics is therefore that branch of learning which seeks to discover and understand the unseen causes at work behind visible nature. Metaphysics then includes the following departments of learning. 1. The nature of being. 2. The nature of God. 3. The nature of knowledge. 4. The nature of truth. 5. The nature of energy. 6. The nature of creation. 7. The nature of divine and human relationships. The purpose of metaphysics is to lead the mind from the consideration of forms and bodies to an understanding of the principles which animate these forms and bodies. The intellect which has discovered the divine essence in all things has the metaphysical viewpoint. In order that you may have a working knowledge of philosophical fundamentals, it is first necessary to lay a metaphysical foundation, that is, a foundation in superphysical principles. Visible nature is but a small part of existence. Although we are limited to visible nature in our present state, we can never live intelligently or think accurately until we have some understanding of that larger world which extends beyond the physical shell of our environment. According to metaphysics, being is an eternal unchanging principle and is denominated the first cause. Pythagoras defines God as an immeasurable and inconceivable being whose soul is composed of the substance of truth and whose body is composed of the substance of light. Being is also termed essence and existence, every effort being made to discover a term appropriately impersonal with which to designate this eternal energy. The modes or aspects of being are termed beings, of which there are 3 kinds. The first kind of being is called the unmoved and is God. The second kind of being is called the self-moving or the gods, chief of which are the intelligences of the celestial bodies. The third kind of being is called the moved and includes all bodies and forms to which life is imparted by spirit, soul, or mind. The chief of such creatures is man. Man, as Tyrius thus sums up the matter, there is one God, the King and Father of all things, and many gods, sons of God, ruling in conjunction with him. Thus, metaphysics teaches us that God is not a personality but rather that divine life upon which all things subsist, and that this one life manifests attributes which are also divine principles. These attributes are called the gods. These second gods are the agencies by which all physical life is supported. When Maximus Tyrius refers to the risings and settings of the gods, he is referring to the ascending and descending of the planets and constellations, which were regarded by the philosophers as the bodies of the secondary deities who move constantly in great orbits about the throne of their eternal Father. If you're enjoying this video and finding value in the content, we kindly ask you to take a moment to subscribe to the channel. A large portion of our listeners and viewers haven't subscribed yet, and by doing so, you'll help us grow and continue bringing you more high-quality audiobooks. Your support means a lot to us, and it's just one click away. So, go ahead and hit that subscribe button to stay connected and never miss out on our latest releases. That we may more fully understand the metaphysical approach to the mystery of first cause, let us examine some of the old fragments which have descended to us from the great metaphysical institutions of the ancients. The monuments of the Egyptians are richly ornamented with lofty sentiments concerning being in God. In the shrine of Nephis at Sais, being is denominated as all that was, is, and shall be. At Thebes, Ammon, the father of the gods, is called the concealed spirit which was from the beginning. In the Louvre papyrus, being is described as goodness itself, Lord of time, who conductest eternity, and Akhenaten adores the Creator as beauty which is love. The Greeks reasoned upon this divine mystery. According to Pythagoras, the eternal principle is number and harmony infinitely diffused. Thales had several definitions. Being, he said, is that which has neither beginning nor end, and is older than time. All things are full of God. The mind of the universe is God. Xenophanes, lifting his eyes to the heavens, exclaims, "Words fail. The one is God." He further declared that the infinite resembles mortals neither in form nor in thought, but abides eternally, moving not at all, but causing all things to move. Aristotle defines the first principle as eternal and perfect, without parts and passions, indivisible and unchanging, adding, "Bliss is the self-activity of God." The belief in an eternally existing principle, termed variously the One, the Beautiful and the Good, is the absolute foundation of metaphysics. This principle is termed in the Mahabharata the root undying whence has sprung whatever is. Thus, all great mystical theologies are primarily monotheistic, worshipping one supreme principle, yet as this one principle has produced out of itself the immeasurable diversity which is perceptible in nature, the philosophers considered it appropriate to regard the attributes of first cause as also divine. From this practice arose polytheism. In next month's letter we shall continue our study of metaphysics, dealing particularly with the nature of knowledge and the nature of truth. Yours sincerely. 944 West 20th Street, Los Angeles, California. Any early pagan prayer: may I be no man's enemy, and may I be the friend of that which is eternal and abides. May I never quarrel with those nearest to me, and if I do, may I be reconciled quickly. May I never devise evil against any man, if any devise evil against me, may I escape uninjured and without the need of hurting him. May I love, seek, and attain that which is good. May I wish for all men's happiness and envy none. May I never rejoice in their fortune of one who has wronged me when I have done or said what is wrong. May I never wait for the rebuke of others, but always rebuke myself until I make amends. May I win no victory that harms either me or my opponent. May I reconcile friends who are wroth with one another. May I, to the extent of my powers, give all needful help to my friend in danger. When visiting those in grief, may I be able by gentle and healing words to soften their pain. May I respect myself. May I always keep tame that which rages within me. May I accustom myself to be gentle, and never be angry with people because of circumstances. May I never discuss who is wicked and what wicked things he has done, but know good men and follow in their footsteps. Eusebius, an Ionic Platonist. Historical supplement. Greek philosophy had its beginning with the 7 sophists. Of these Thales was the foremost, being deeply versed in all natural wisdom, whereas the other 6 were honored principally for their eminence in jurisprudence, morality, and ethics. The Greek word for wisdom was Sophia, and one who had raised his soul to an eminent degree of knowledge came to be called a sophist or a wise man. It was the 7 sophists who formulated the laws that resulted in the establishment of the Greek civilization. Upon the foundation which they laid, the Hellenic states rose to superlative heights of culture, giving to the world the greatest aggregation of thinkers ever produced by a single people. Philostratus thus defines the sophistry of the original Greeks: we must regard the ancient sophistic art as philosophic rhetoric, for it discusses the themes that philosophers treat of, but whereas they, by their method of questioning, set snares for knowledge, and advance step by step as they confirm the minor points of their investigations, but assert that they have still not sure knowledge, the sophist of the old school assumes a knowledge of that whereof he speaks. At any rate, he introduces his speeches with such phrases as "one know," or "I am aware," or "one have long observed," or "for mankind there is nothing fixed and sure." This kind of introduction gives a tone of nobility and self-confidence to a speech and implies a clear grasp of the truth. The opinions of the sophists were so varied that their thought is not susceptible of organization into any general body of doctrines. In fact, the term as originally applied was an honorary title signifying intellectual excellence, but in no way limiting or identifying the nature of the thought. It is generally acknowledged that many philosophers of eminent attainments were termed sophists, but the word later fell into disrepute until it came to signify professional teachers or those who taught philosophy for prescribed fees. Most references of the sophists which have descended to this day originates among their adversaries, one of the chiefs of whom was Socrates, who accused the sophists of his time of prostituting knowledge for gain. Thales of Miletus, 5th century B.C., of Phoenician extraction, has the distinction of being the first upon whom the title Sopnos or the wise was conferred. Thales spent the greater part of his life in travel. He was initiated into the mysteries of the Cretans, penetrated into Asia and Phoenicia, and his last and most extensive journey was to Egypt, where he was instructed in the arts and sciences by the priests of the Temple of Jupiter at Memphis. Being the first of the Greeks to engage in speculative learning, he was regarded with special veneration, and in his 59th year was honored with the title of the Wise. Though deeply versed in occult lore, his philosophy was evolved within his own mind. Having received no aid in the interpretation of the elaborate metaphysics of the Eastern nations, he was dignified with the additional title of the self-learned. Cicero acknowledges Thales to be the first author of philosophy. Strabo, that he was the first of the Greeks to inquire into natural causes and mathematics. Plutarch calls him the inventor of philosophy, Justin Martyr the most ancient of philosophers, Tertullian, the first of natural philosophers. The basic principles of the philosophy of Thales are as follows. 1. Water is the first principle of all natural bodies, from which they come, of which they are composed, upon which they subsist, and to which they will ultimately be resolved. 2. Humidity, because it is present in the seed of all living creatures, is the basis of generation. 3. God is that which hath neither beginning nor end. For the world is full of gods and heroes which exist invisibly in the air, and in their invisible states these entities are called souls. 5. Soul is a self-moving nature having within itself the power of moving other things. 6. The world is alive, and God is the soul thereof, diffused through every part through the medium water. Bios had the title of the wise conferred upon him because he purchased from slavery some captive Messenian girls and reared them as his own daughters, later giving them portions of his estate and returning them to their own parents. Bios was much given to pleading the cause of the oppressed and was famed throughout Greece for his knowledge of jurisprudence. Those who came to him seeking advice on the problems of right living invariably received this answer: J. Before you perform an Y act, behold your own face in a mirror. If your face seems handsome, do some handsome thing that is worthy of it. If it seems ill-formed, do some beautiful deed that will supply the defect of nature. The death of Bios was a dramatic event. After pleading the cause of a fellow citizen in the courts, Bios, who was very old, seated himself to await the decision of the judges. The court rendered judgment in favor of Bios and disbanded, only to discover the aged jurist dead in his seat. Bios was not the founder of any important philosophical system, but is honored principally because of his deep practical insight into the issues of daily life. The following are representative of his precepts. 1. He is indeed unfortunate who cannot bear misfortune. 2. Lt is a disease of the mind to desire after such things as cannot be reasonably obtained. 3. The most difficult thing to bear courageously is a change for the worse. It is better to decide a difference between our enemies than between our friends, for in the first place one of our enemies will become a friend, but in the second place one of our friends will certainly become an enemy. 5. We should so live that it becomes of no moment whether life be long or short. That leader of the state gains most glory, who first himself obeys the laws of his state. 7. Those who busy themselves in vain knowledge resemble owls who see only in the night, opinions, J. but are blind in the light, facts. Pittacus combined both military and judicial power. The people of Mytilene chose him as general of their armies and later, by popular vote, elevated him to the tyranny, the state of absolute rulership. He governed the Mytileneans for 10 years, greatly improving the laws of the state, and at the end of that time, feeling his age unequal to the burden, resigned the government in spite of the protestations of his P. He died at the age of 100, according to Lucian. Pittacus is remembered chiefly for what is called his great sentence: two simple but all-powerful words, no opportunity. His political precepts may be summed up in his own statement, taken from Plutarch: that ruler is indeed happy who has made his subjects afraid not of him but for him. Being a man in high position, sorrow weighed heavily upon the soul of Pittacus. On one occasion he was moved to say, "Reproach not the unhappy, for the hand of God is upon them." Like Socrates, Pittacus was unhappily married, his wife being of birth and station above him. On one occasion his wife overthrew the table where he and some guests were dining. Seeing that his friends were troubled, Pittacus remarked, "Each of you has some misfortune. He is happiest who has none more serious than a nagging wife." The following are representative of his precepts. The greatest good is to do the present thing well. 2. It is the duty of a wise man to foresee evil and to prevent it. 3. It is the duty of a valiant man to overcome evil when it is at hand. For the past is certain, that which is to come is obscure. 5. He who envies another is mad. This philosopher pardoned the murderer 8 of his own son, and released him to liberty, saying, "Pardon is better than penitence." Kylon of Lacedeem 9 Yen was a philosopher of such superior wisdom that his words ranked among the oracles. 3 of his precepts were, on the authority of Pliny, placed in the temple at Delphi, and laid in letters of gold upon marble. These precepts were honesty, that every man should know himself; 2nd, that moderation is the secret of happiness; and 3rd, that money is the cause of misery. He further declared that love and hate were the fiercest of the affections of the soul. They therefore fashioned the following precept: "Love all things as though sometime you might hate them, and hate all things as though sometime you might love them." Chilon once asked Aesop what Jupiter was doing. The famous writer of fables replied, "Jupiter is continually pulling down the high and raising up the low." Chilon died embracing his son, when the youth was declared victor in the Olympic Games. The aged man's joy was so excessive that his heart was unable to stand the strain. Among the moral sentences of Chilon are the following: 1. The learned differ from the unleavened in that the wise have a good hope. 2. 3 things are difficult: to conceal secrets, to make good use of leisure, and to bear the injuries of the unjust. 3. A ruler of the state must not think upon any transitory mortal things, but only upon those things which are eternal and immortal. 4. If you are strong, behave mildly that you may be respected rather than feared. 5. Fear that man who is inquisitive into the business of others. 4. Let not your tongue run more swiftly than your mind. 7. Prefer honest loss to unjust gain. 8. Go slowly to the feast to your friends, but go swiftly to their misfortunes. Copyright 2025 by Manly Hall Official. Thank you for listening. Please consider to subscribe, like, and share to help the channel growth. New videos on a daily basis.